person he had practically plowed down a smile. In that split second, he was held dumbfounded. Brando blinked, then blinked again. He knew her. He would recognize those amazing blue eyes anywhere. Kaitlin Fitzpatrick? She shook her head as she focused on his face. Brando? She asked, her voice breathless enough to send his heart skipping a beat or two. Before she could say anything else, he pulled her into his arms for a hug. All those wondrous curves pressed up against him. I can't believe I literally ran into you. When he released her, her face had turned an adorable shade of pink. Her blonde hair was up in a sassy ponytail. A dangle of silver hoops hung from her ears and the dress. God, the woman was wearing a red sundress that hugged her hips and gave him a hint at cleavage. When he made eye contact with her again, his brain froze. It was always like this. His ability to talk seemed to dissolve around Kaitlin on a regular basis. From the moment he had met her their freshman year at the University of Maryland, he couldn't seem to form a coherent thought when he looked into her eyes. He could still remember the way he had fantasized about her. He knew that every time he met a woman, he compared her to Kaitlin, and he hadn't even kissed her. He cleared his throat and brought his mind back to the present. How long has it been? He asked. She shook her head. Since graduation. What are you doing here? Her gaze roamed over his unruly curls and she frowned. Did you get out of the Marines? He shook his head. I've been on leave, so I let it grow out a bit. She laughed and pressed her hand against his jaw. She snapped it back as if she realized she was acting too familiar for a married woman. That explains the beard. He nodded. I always let it go when I have a week or so off. I'm PCSing out to the East Coast. Wow, Quantico? He laughed. No, I'm actually going to be in your neck of the woods. Going to be teaching ROTC at Maryland. Her eyes widened, then she chuckled. I never thought you would end up back there. Once a terrapin, always a terrapin. Ain't that the truth? Then silence. They always had these awkward pauses in their conversation. Most of the problem had been Brando. He was always trying to come up with something else to say to her. He did everything he could to spend more time in her presence. So what happened with you? Did you move back to Baltimore? She shook her head. I stayed in College Park to finish up my master's in speech pathology. Ah, he said. And did you and what's-his-name get married? He could have found out easily enough. They were both on social media and had several friends in common, but Brando had avoided it. He hadn't friended or followed her on any of them. If he didn't hear she was married, he didn't have to deal with the feelings. Her eyes danced. His name was Glenn, and no, we did not get married. He glanced down at her hand and back at her face. No ring. Oh? Yeah, it just didn't happen. So she wasn't going to share what happened, not yet at least. At one time, she had shared all kinds of things with him. It saddened him a little to know that she didn't feel comfortable with him like that anymore. Now that he ran into her, Brando was hoping that he could change that. So you're not married now? She shook her head. You? He shrugged. I've been deployed a lot. Makes it hard. And none of them had been Kaitlin. She had become the standard to which he judged every woman. He knew it had been a mistake to do that. But since meeting her his freshman year, he'd never been able to get her out of his head. I can understand that. Then a beat of silence filled the air between them again. It had been 10 years since he had seen her, and he still felt that tickle in the back of his throat. Hell, his palms were sweaty. The awkward pauses always made it worse. She didn't look that different. Well, a little bit, but for the better. Thank God she was still curvy. He never liked skinny women. He liked his women to have flesh he could hold on to. Whenever he looked at her, he could come up with no other word than comfort. Okay, and sexy and need, and just a whole slew of other words to do with sex, and kissing. So, you're going out with your brothers tonight? She asked, pulling him out of his thoughts. He shook his head. Here with some friends. She opened her mouth to say something else.